I received this story over the weekend. Apparently, this guy's wife got a new job and she started cheating on him, but sounds like he got the last laugh. First, I'll share a little backstory about me and my wife. Since I want to stay anonymous, I'll use placeholder names. Anyways, I'm Jack and my wife, now ex-wife, is Sheila. We met on an online dating site and hit it off right away. I was a carpenter from Bellevue, Ohio, a smallish suburban town without much to speak of, while Sheila was from Columbus. At the time, I was working as a carpenter in my local town. If people needed renovations or had broken furniture, I was their guy. My wife worked in a Columbus restaurant. We went out once a week at first. Eventually, we decided to get married after a year and a half. I wish back then I could have known how much of a mistake that would turn out to be. For the first 5 years of our marriage, things went well. We moved in together in a Columbus apartment, and while it was a little on the small side, we were happy to share the space. We both agreed on not having kids either, at least until we had enough money to afford a family. We'd go to the library on the weekends to rent cheap movies, and once a month, we'd eat out at my wife's place of work. They offered employee discounts. Life was fairly good, and even without that much money coming in, I was happy. I didn't know it at the time, but my wife didn't feel the same way. One day, Sheila came back from work extra late. She looked like she wanted to throttle someone, and her clothes were dripping wet. She took off her hat. Workers were required to wear one at a restaurant, and sighed very loudly. I asked her, "What's wrong?" She said one of the dishwashers didn't make it in. I told them washing dishes wasn't part of my job, but they were not having it. I had to stay extra late finishing all the work, and apparently, I'm not even getting overtime. Sheila had mentioned asking for a raise, but never built up the courage to confront her boss. I always urged her to do it anyway, though, because she worked twice as hard as anyone else and had been working at the restaurant for several years. Sheila didn't reply to my question, though, and instead, she looked off into the distance with a strange focus. Sheila said she was going to quit, claiming her company never valued her as an employee. I told Sheila, "I know it's not fair, but we can't pay for rent on just my salary." Sheila suddenly looked at me with an angry expression and blamed me because she had to work as well to help out with the bills. Then she threw a jab at me, saying if I stopped fixing windows and got a real job, she wouldn't be stuck in the same restaurant for the next 10 years. I was floored. We'd had arguments in the past, but this was a different side to Sheila than I was used to. She never used to insult my work or lay blame on me in this way. I was livid. I replied in the heat of the moment, "I've been working the same job since before we met, and if you don't like it, then feel free to leave. I don't need you, and don't ever blame me for your problems." She stormed out of the house, and I didn't hear from her for the rest of the night. I texted her, but I got no response. When I called, each call went right to voicemail, or was hung up on the spot. When I tried to get in touch with her parents, or other family, they all told me she wasn't speaking to me. While I was by myself, I started to wonder if I made a mistake. Was I too harsh on Sheila? At the time, I thought I should have been a little more diplomatic, but I now know that this was just the first red flag of a great betrayal that was coming very soon. About a week later, Sheila texted me asking to meet. We both went to the same restaurant where Sheila worked, and there we made up. Apologies were exchanged, parts were mended, and it seemed like everything was going back to normal. However, there was one big change that wasn't like normal. I noticed when we got the bill that there was no employee discount. I asked Sheila about this. Did they forget the employee discount or something? Nope. Sheila replied with an upbeat demeanor. "I found a new job, a better one." "That's great," I responded. "What is it?" "Delta Airlines." Sheila was smiling like a child on Christmas Eve, and it was hard to blame her. Working for airlines was very difficult, requiring years of training and preparation. I asked, "How did you land a job like that in a single week?" "It's not that hard to believe, is it?" Sheila was implying that I thought she was lying or something. She then says, "I'm not trying to be a pilot. I'm working as a flight attendant. I just had to take a few classes, and that was that. And my sister is dating one of the interviewers, so that helped a little bit too." Then she mentioned something about a certificate. She says, "I applied for it after college, but never ended up using it until now. I guess those things don't expire for a very long time or something." I was amazed. My wife managed to get a job as a flight attendant for a major airline company in a single week. I was proud and even a little jealous, and a part of me couldn't forget her comments about fixing windows. For the moment, I put that aside to focus on the good side of things. We were back together, and we'd be able to support ourselves while also loving our jobs together. Things were good, and I hoped they would stay that way forever. Sadly, the good times will run out far sooner than I ever could have expected. Fast forward 4 years, and I started noticing a change in my wife. Her work for Delta Airlines meant she would be traveling and wouldn't come home at all while she was traveling. I was busy with my carpentry work too, but at times I felt like there was something else going on. At first, I brushed away this feeling, but as time passed and my wife continued to become more distant, I finally had to say something. When she came home at almost midnight one night after returning from one of her trips, I confronted her over it. I told her we needed to talk. I brought up the issue of her not interacting with me much when she would come home. I told her, I know your work is important, but I feel like we're drifting apart. Sheila replied, Of course not. I love you, but I can't control when I go to work or come back. My job requires that I spend quite a bit of time away from home, or nobody would have flight attendants for late night flights. I asked her, couldn't she ask for different times? I understand that her work has certain demands, but if that comes between us, then we should fix that problem, right? Her response was a bit surprising. She said, That's not an option, and my work isn't coming between us any more than yours. Let's talk about something else now. I dropped the subject. Since I could tell she was getting a little angry, I brought it up. Still, I wasn't reassured that everything could be explained just by work. It's hard to explain, but there was something in the little things that added up over time. She would say, I love you less often, be in more of a hurry to leave in the mornings, and when we were together, she was often looking at her phone or out a window. These and a dozen other small signs were warning me, but I didn't know what they were warning me about. All I knew for sure was that something didn't feel right in my gut, and I had to figure out what it was. Later that night, I found out the truth, and it ripped me apart when I did. Sheila had gone to bed before me, and I was making a late night meal before going to bed. In the past, we'd have sex around this time, but even that became less and less frequent. My wife claimed it was because she was tired, but a part of me wasn't sure if that was the whole truth. All of these little things were nagging me in the back of my brain. So, when I saw Sheila's phone on the kitchen counter, I made a decision that would change everything. I'd seen her unlock her phone in the past and knew the passcode as a result. All I had to do was unlock it and see for myself if my gut suspicions were right. I picked up the phone, unlocked it, and took a look. Inside, I found that all of my worst fears were confirmed. There were messages with guys I had never heard of, with pictures even I didn't send to Sheila. One of the contacts, a guy named Jason, had hundreds of messages about meeting up, intimate conversations, and plenty of sexting. I even found her Tinder profile, where she claimed to be single and put up provocative pictures for the whole world to see. My wife had been sleeping around for years by now, and all of it while pretending to be hard at work up until the middle of the night. I wanted to cry, yell at my wife, and curl up in a ball. Instead, I kept my calm and used my head. I took screenshots of everything, archived all the information I could, and sent everything to my phone and computer. After that, I quietly gathered all of Sheila's things and put them in boxes from the basement. It took damn near the whole night, but the anger and betrayal gave me a kind of zen energy that kept me going. I even considered sending some of the stuff to Sheila's family, but decided against it. What she did to me was wrong, but I wasn't going to stoop to that level because of it. Instead, I found a lawyer in the area online and sent a message asking for legal advice. I'd be going for a divorce and wanted to keep my shirt after all was said and done. Finally, as the sun was starting to come up, I made myself some coffee and waited for Sheila to wake up. When she finally did, she stumbled downstairs in a seemingly hungover manner. She had been doing that a lot in the recent past, and I'd brush it off as tiredness, but I now thought there was probably another cause after all. She was a little confused, since I normally woke up after her and took a seat while I made her a cup of coffee. I spoke first. I want a divorce. Sheila laughed at first, but as she saw my stern expression, the laughter trailed off. You're serious? Deadly, I responded. Why? Sheila asked. because I found out what you were doing behind my back. You lied to me, Sheila, and now I want you gone." I expected tears or begging or maybe yelling. To my shock, I got none of that. Sheila was almost totally emotionless, like a carved statue. Okay then, probably for the best, honestly. Her response hurt me deeply than any nastiness could have. All this time, I thought we were in love, but in that moment, I realized it had all been a lie. Even if she once loved me, it was long gone now. We were together because it was easier for her to stay than to leave, but she didn't feel anything special for me. I spoke, trying to contain the pain in my voice. "Your stuff is already packed. I want you gone by the end of the day. I'll send you the divorce papers as soon as I get them. After that, we're through." Sheila didn't say another word. She got her things, made a few calls, and waited for her ride to come pick her up. She looked straight out the window while sitting in one of the kitchen chairs and didn't move a muscle the entire time. When the car finally arrived to pick her up, she left the apartment and got in without another word. 1 week later, and I'd finally cleared things up with the lawyer I contacted. He sent me all the divorce documents I needed and told me that I could even get alimony because of my wife's high-paying job. I was skeptical if the judge would be all right with that, but decided to add it to the documents nevertheless. After everything was ready to go, I sent it to Sheila, who was staying with her parents. I sent a text to her after the papers were sent. "The papers are on their way. Once you've signed them, we can both move on from this." She responded later that day. "Once I sign these, it's all over?" "Yes," I replied. She responded, "Good." I got the divorce papers back about a day later and reviewed them with my lawyer. Inside, the papers had a generous alimony payment for me, both because of my lower paying job and the infidelity of my ex-wife. I figured Sheila would contest the numbers, but it seemed she was comfortable with paying that much. Now, all that was left was to submit the papers to the court and get this divorce hearing underway. In the end, submitting them took an afternoon of driving to a nearby courthouse, wait for the court hearing. About a month later, it was finally over. I was divorced from my cheating wife. Fast forward another month. I received my first alimony payment of nearly $600 into my bank account. Turns out that being a flight attendant pays a lot better than me fixing windows. Needless to say, Sheila wasn't happy about that, lol. I sent her a thank you text for her monthly generous donation to my bank account. I saw that my cheating ex-wife was in the middle of typing a reply, but I never read it. Before it was even sent, I blocked her number and deleted her contact from my phone. I never heard from her again. I am still getting alimony payments and I don't feel bad about my carpenter job. Her cheating on me turned out to be some supplemental income for me. It sucks I had to lose my wife over it as I loved her with all my heart, but what's done is done. In January 2020, my friend makes a stupid decision and buys a brand new car he can't afford. His insurance is like $400 a month. He makes like $10.25 an hour working as a shift supervisor at McDonald's. His car payment is like $795 a month. Now at $10.25 an hour, 30 hours a week, that's a weekly income of about $300 or about $1,230 a month. So yeah. So my friend came to me for help because I used to sell cars and know the industry pretty well. I go over his paperwork. The dealer did rip him off, but my friend is trying to find a way to get out of this mess, and ripping someone off isn't illegal. They did, of course, overcharge him for the warranty. They gave him a higher APR. They had add-ons, etc. But none of that is illegal, and I know the only way I can get my friend out of this deal is if they did something illegal. So I look at his finance application that my friend signed. It correctly listed his income, which turned a light bulb on in my head. No bank is going to approve someone for a $795 car payment if they're only making $1,200 a month. It does not make mathematical sense to do that. So I start searching through his paperwork for the finance app the dealer submitted to the bank. You oftentimes submit a finance application at a dealership. The dealership will take the hand-filled out application and reproduce it electronically. This is pretty normal. However, on the application the dealer submitted to the bank, the dealer said my friend was the GM of the McDonald's and made $70,000 a year. My friend had good credit, so it doesn't appear like the bank asked for proof of income. So I go to the dealership with my friend and tell the sales manager he's going to put me in touch with the GM because we're going to be unwinding my friend's deal and giving his trade-in back. The sales manager thought I was joking. The GM also thought I was joking. Then I demonstrated how this dealership finance department committed bank fraud. I showed the GM the finance app my friend filled out. I then showed the GM the finance app his dealership submitted to the bank and pointed at the income difference. My friend really made $14,000 a year. The dealership claimed my friend made $70,000 a year. That's bank fraud. That's a felony. Let's keep this simple, shall we? The GM sees his dealership is in a load of shit. The proof I am presenting to him is rock solid. He knows it. I know it. We are all on the same page. He goes, okay, so what can I do to make this right? I go, unwind the deal, give my friend his trade-in back. Unwinding the deal is basically the GM agreeing to cancel the deal, and basically erasing the deal, and pretending it never happened. GM tries to avoid that, but I remain firm and remind him we can easily take this documentation and turn his life into a living hell. He knows I'm right. My friend also needs a car to get to work the next day. The GM says he'll check into it. He comes back and tells me, unfortunately they sold this trade-in already. I said that's fine. Unwind the deal, and let's put my friend into something that's good or slightly better than what he traded in for. So the GM goes, so he'll buy a car similar to his trade-in? I said, no, you'll give him a car similar to his trade-in. The GM goes, it doesn't work that way. I go, it does when you commit bank fraud. The GM is upset with me, and I remind him I'm being really nice and the situation can get really ugly, like felony level charges ugly, like losing a franchise ugly. So yeah, this is going to hurt, but it's going to hurt less my way. So the GM goes, all right. And he looks in his inventory, and he tells me they have a 2007 Ford Focus with 10,000 more miles. I tell him, no, the car you give my friend needs to be the same or better than what he traded in. The GM counters, I'm giving him a free car. And I go, no, you took his trade-in, you sold it. You made money on that sale. You also committed a felony in the process of selling him his new car. You are now correcting that mistake. This isn't a free car for my friend. This is you correcting your mistake. GM insists that's what he's willing to do. I tell him if he can't do better than that, we will go to a consumer protection attorney and have a conversation with him. My friend didn't want to go this route, but it was our plan B. We go to get up. The GM says, wait, give me a second. The GM goes, I have a 2008 Civic. It has 5,000 more miles, but it's a Civic and not a Focus. I unwind the deal on the new car and put your friend in the Civic at no extra cost. We agree. GM has the paper drawn up. The old loan on the new car is canceled. They take in the new car again. But because it's already titled, they'll have to sell it as used. That sucks for them. And they gave my friend a better car than the one he traded in.